Johnston. I'm Chief Editor at Inorganic Growth and Managing Principal of Millennial Venture, a San Rafael-based private investment firm. And I'm excited here today to have our guest, Frumi Barr, the Chief Inspiration Officer and founder of Scaling for Growth. So we're lucky to have her here. And we're also here in the backdrop at Jack's London Square. And excited to talk about our topic today, which is all about egos and whether egos are actually helpful or hurtful to the growth of a company. So Frumi, I don't want to steal your thunder. You've had 30 plus years of experience of both growing your company and helping guide CEOs to success. So maybe you could talk a little bit about your background and your path and your story. That'd be great.
Well, sure. So every morning in Africa, a gazelle wakes up and it knows it has to run really fast or it's going to get killed. Every morning a lion wakes up and knows that it has to run faster than the slowest gazelle or it's going to starve. So when the sun comes up, somebody better be running. And it's the same with businesses. If you don't stay ahead of your competition, you're just going to get eaten.
I love that. And that's perfect, right? Because it's all about how can you be successful, how can you grow your company, and how can you do it in a scalable way. And I love that story. That's great.
So my mission, because I was founder of 3 really fast-growing companies, and I didn't have a business education in those days. Now I have an MBA and a PhD, but then I had a degree in physical therapy, if you believe that. And what I didn't realize was I had to stay ahead of the liquidity so I could grow properly. And I wasn't as successful as I could have been. I wish I would have had a guide on the side to help me.
But you've still had huge success, and it's fascinating, right? Because you have a physical therapy background, but you're still achieved the apex of success in business, right? Growing something from nothing, and then potentially or eventually selling it, right?
Right, exactly. So how much better would I have been, though, if I would have had a guide who was able to guide me to be profitable and more efficient and all those things?
Yeah, no, it's hugely valuable. I look at a ton of deals every year, and I can tell you that's probably the one thing that I see or lack of in CEOs and companies is they never have that outside looking in perspective to give them kind of guidance or coaching or guiding to success.
And you know what? They don't know what they don't know.
Exactly.
That's the biggest problem.
And you're also the author of 2 books, right?
Mm-hmm, right.
And one of them, which is CEO's Secret Weapon, How to Accelerate Success, had Simon Sinek write the foreword.
That's right.
That's incredible. How do you know Simon?
I met Simon, well, I had an inspiring person, John Strzelecki, who wrote a book called The Big 5 for Life, all about the 5 things you want to do in your life to make you really successful. And I woke up the next morning and I thought, that's what's wrong with companies. They don't lead with their purpose.
Right.
So someone mentioned to me the next day, it was one of those fake things, have you ever heard of Simon Sinek? And I said, no. And she handed me his book. She had it with her. So as a matter of fact, I'm wearing a medallion that has the golden circle on the other side. I'll show it to you after. So you could say I stalked Simon in a very nice way. And Simon, as he inspired people around the world, referred people to me so that I could consult with them and help them find their purpose.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's good.
And that's why he wrote the foreword.
That's great. That's great. So what an impressive background. We have an expert here with us to talk about egos, and that's what we're going to talk about. And this is not a psychology session.
Right.
And we've talked about that before we did this, right? So what we're going to do is I'm going to give a quick baseline definition of what we talk about when we say ego. And this is coming from Gary Van Wormerden's article is What is Ego? So bear with me. I'm going to read this. It'll take a minute just so we're all on the same page of what we're talking about when we say ego. So the ego is an identity of our own construction. These talents, abilities, and aspects of our personality will be attributes of our skills, but the mental construct of our self is artificial. When we have thoughts about ourself that we agree with, we construct a self-image. The kinds of thoughts that contribute to the ego structure are things like, I'm not good at math, I'm not smart, nobody likes me, I'm better than you, and that was stupid of me. When we have such thoughts, and we agree with even the slightest conviction that these ideas define us, then we are building or reinforcing an ego. Problems arise, however, when that self-image is negative, inaccurate, or even overly positive. Doesn't sound like CEOs, right? So that's what we're going to talk about today. So Frumi, I'm going to kick it off with the 30,000-foot view. Is a CEO's or a business owner's ego, is it good or bad for growth of their company?
CEOs have to set a vision. You can't be a leader if you don't have any followers. So how you impact your followers is key. And at the bottom of what you just said, it's all about beliefs, what people believe about themselves. Curiously enough, I was at the Fortune and Gazelle's Growth Summit just 2 weeks ago in Dallas. And Vern Harnish, who was the founder of EO and the author of the Rockefeller Habits and Scaling Up, how some companies make it and others don't. The first thing he said as he opened up the summit was that the obstacle that inhibits a company's growth the most is the ego of the CEO, the ego of the CEO.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. So, and I forgot to mention this, but the whole reason of why this topic, or why did this topic come up? Well, I was looking at a company to buy several months ago, and it's a small little company. It's probably less than $3 million in revenue, and been around for probably over 5 years, 5, 6, 7 years, something like that. And we didn't pursue it, but I offered to the CEO. I said, hey, listen, I think we can help you. We've got a great network. We kind of know what you're trying to do here, and I think we can be helpful. So whatever it is that we can do to help you, don't hesitate to ask. We'd love to be able to put you in touch with anybody that we can to help you be successful. And his response was, it was a little bit arrogant. It was a little bit like, well, we kind of know what we need to do. We don't really need any help. We know where we're going. But then it was almost at odds with what he was telling me his goals and visions were for his business. He wants to grow to be this big business. He wants to be successful and all these things. But so on one hand you had this need for help to grow the business, and on the other hand, you had this little bit of this ego thing, right? This I know it all. I don't need any help, and they were very at odds. So for me, that was kind of the whole topic of very enlightening of whether an ego is helpful or hurtful to a business. So with that said, do we all have egos? Do CEOs all have egos?
Everyone has an ego. It's how you perceive yourself. It's the belief system you have.
Yeah, and I guess to Gary's point, which is it's not bad to have an ego because everybody does have an ego, but it's when that ego starts to distort reality, whether it's overly positive or you have a negative belief about yourself, or you don't need help, or you know it all, where it starts to hurt, potentially the growth of your company. Would you agree with that?
There's a lot of books written about leadership. There are servant leaders, primal leaders, command and control leaders. The most important thing for a leader to be is a conscious leader. To know that the buck always stops on his or her desk,
Right.
and they have to know what kind of leader to be in what circumstance. So a leader who's arrogant, or a leader who's shut off from having a strategic thinking team or an advisory board, those are the leaders that ultimately are going to be there, do themselves in.
Yeah, and that's a great point, and I think we may have talked about this one before, which is ego kind of like a dial, where sometimes it's good to dial it up, and sometimes it's good to dial it back. And if that's the case, what are those times?
Well, if someone was doing a pitch to you to buy their company, you would want to hear that they had confidence, that they had vision, and that they really believed in themselves, and that they could direct their team.
Yep.
So that's when you dial it up. But that's when you also have to know what you're expecting, what your objectives are.
Right.
Do you want to have a lifestyle business? Do you want to really grow your business? And here's the biggest question. Are you prepared to step out of the way if you're not the right leader anymore?
Right.
What other role should you take in the company that will really maximize your skills and leave room for somebody else to take the ball and run with it?
Well, I'm sure it's a scary thing for a business owner that may have started a company from scratch and been in it for 5 or 10 years, and now all of a sudden they're at the point where they've kind of plateaued with the revenue of the company, and this ego thing is kind of inhibiting them or holding them back from being what you said, self-aware, being a self-aware leader, of knowing when to get out of the way, or knowing when to ask for help, or bring people into the company to help them grow.
Right.
Right?
Right, and there's nothing wrong with being the leader and being the CEO and making sure that everyone at the table is smarter than you.
Right.
Right? And you can still maintain that role, but if you think you have to control everything as the CEO, chances are you're going to fail sooner or later.
Well, that's a great point too, which is purposely not being the smartest person in the room, almost
Right.
being the dumbest person in the room, but knowing when to connect people, right?
Right.
And I've seen that so many times too, where the CEO tries to be the smartest person in the room, and what happens in those situations?
Usually they shut everybody else down. Because when they think they have to be the smartest person, one of the things that I see in a team meeting, as soon as the CEO puts someone down, they want their salary.
Yeah.
And they shut up.
Yep.
And then so you've hired all these people, nowadays could be well over $100,000 for each of them,
Right.
and yet you're not allowing them to share their brilliance. What's the point in that?
So you turn the organization into maybe yes people
That's right.
versus challenging your assumptions, challenging the way you think about your company, and really coming up with new ideas.
Yes, and at the core of the success of a team, you have to have trust between people.
Yep.
And once you have trust, then you can have that healthy kind of debate so that you make the right decisions. And we always care about 4 areas of decisions: the people decisions, the strategy decisions, the execution decisions, and then the cash management decisions.
That's great. Is that a framework?
That's a framework. That's the Gazelle's
That's
framework.
the Gazelle's framework.
Those are the 4 decisions.
I read that, and it makes sense.
Right.
And
it makes sense.
it's simple, but it makes sense.
Exactly.
That's great.
And as soon as you don't have that healthy debate, then people leave the room making commitments that they can't keep.
Right.
And then they're not accountable, and then ultimately you don't get the results that you need.
Right. Well, maybe a couple more questions, and then we'll wrap it up with some big takeaways. In a business context, and let's take it out from the perspective of whether you're pitching it to somebody or not. Right? Well, here we are. We're sitting at the table. We need to make a big decision about the company. Is an ego helpful to that business owner in that context to be able to help guide the employees to achieving that goal or not? Is it forget about the ego thing, be an open book, be the dumbest person in the room, let your people make the decision, let them run with it, and just go with it, and just forget about the ego thing?
Right. Well, if the ego thing are the belief systems, and if you believe in yourself as a CEO, then you know that you can make the right decisions if you trust your people.
Right.
So that's when your ego has to step out of the way.
Yep. So trust in your people, trust in the people that you've hired.
Right.
Get out of the way. Stop trying to make all of the decisions. Stop trying to be the smartest person in the room.
Right.
All of those things.
Right.
That's great.
So the 3 things that I would like people to really take away from this.
Yeah, what are the big 3 takeaways?
First of all, that self-awareness is not a soft skill. That self-awareness is important so that you create the right impact on your people so that they will want to follow you, so that they're motivated and inspired. The second thing is to hire the brightest people that you can, not based on a job description, but based on the outcomes that you want in your company. And then your job as a leader is to remove the obstacles and get out of their way. Let them do what you hired them to do.
So, 3 takeaways again, I'll repeat them. 1, self-awareness. 2, hiring the smartest and best people, focused on outcomes. And 3, creating that culture, focusing on creating that culture and getting out of the way. And that's what it's all about. Put the ego to the side and focus on those three things, and you'll be successful. So Frumi, thank you today. This has been excellent. We will do our best to get you in touch with Frumi. If you need to talk to her, I'm sure she could do a consultative session to help you solve your problems. I know she can. So please reach out to her. She has had a long history of success in growing businesses and guiding CEOs to more scalable, more successful businesses. So Frumi, thank you very much for joining us.
And thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you.